and I'm unable to comment.
We can't go on together. We're suspicious.
That was Attorney General Jeff Sessions in his confirmation hearing saying that he had no involvement or connection or communication with Russia's ambassador. There's a Washington Post story that says he does. Karen Travers, ABC News White House correspondent, was going to talk to us about other things, but Karen Travers, this is some interesting information that dropped late last night.
Yeah, it's always breaking news around the White House these days. The White House and Jeff Sessions confirming that there were two different conversations with the Russian ambassador during the campaign season last year. But they insist that these conversations were in his capacity as a senator, as a member of the Senate Armed Services Committee. And that's completely consistent with what he said that day in his confirmation hearing, because he was asked about campaign ties to Russia. Well, that response is, of course, not going over well with Democrats, who say that is just parsing words. And at a minimum, Jeff Sessions should recuse himself from leading the investigation at the Justice Department into the Trump campaign's ties to Russia. Others are saying he maybe should consider resigning as Attorney General if it turned out he deliberately misled Congress during that confirmation hearing.
Yeah, so there are some Democrats who are calling for him to resign. No Republicans. There's a tweet this morning from a Missouri Senator, Claire McCaskill. She says, "I've been on the Armed Services Committee for 10 years, the same Armed Services Committee that Sessions says that's why he met with the Russian ambassador." But she says, "I've been on the Armed Services Committee for 10 years. No call or meeting with Russian ambassador ever. Ambassadors call members of the Foreign Relations Committee."
Yeah, there's a lot of questions, of course, of, he had these two conversations last year with the Russian ambassador, and they say it's in that context. What about the year before or the year before that? I mean, or did these just pop up during a political season? This just adds another chapter to this ongoing story of the Trump campaigns and campaigns' ties to Russia. Of course, Michael Flynn resigning after misleading the vice president about his conversations. And now you have this. The White House is blasting this as a partisan attack by Democrats. And Jeff Sessions actually just a few moments ago was speaking outside his house. And he also said that trying to tie this to any campaign conversation, he says, is false. But a lot of questions still swirling about this. The president's traveling today, so we will not have a formal White House briefing, but certainly we are asking a lot of questions.
One of the other interesting things, Karen Travers, and I don't know what the normal procedure is, but one of the meetings was in his, I guess, Senate office. The other meeting was at the Republican convention.
After a speech he had given, they say that he was approached by the Russian ambassador. Again, they're trying to say that there was nothing campaign related to all of this. I mean, but then I think the question is, are they going to have to say exactly what was discussed? The criticism that Democrats are launching is, if there was nothing to hide, then why not just say that? You had two opportunities. One, in your questionnaire from the Senate committee before your confirmation hearing, where they asked about this and you said no. And then in that confirmation hearing, just say, I met with the Russian ambassador, but I did it in this context. Nothing to see there. It maybe would have made things a lot more less difficult than they are right now.
Yeah.
It's always the appearance of trying to hide something that makes the controversy swirl.
I thought it was interesting. Who knew that the Russian ambassador was at the Republican convention? That's sort of interesting news.
He's a very popular guy in Washington these days. It seems like everybody is talking to him.
This is the same man in which Michael Flynn misinformed the vice president having conversations with during the transition.
Yes. Those conversations that Michael Flynn had where he said he did not talk about sanctions. I mean, there wasn't a denial that he had those conversations, and he was a key member of the transition team. So it wasn't surprising that he was talking to him. But for Michael Flynn, it was related to the nature of what he was talking about and whether he discussed the Obama-era sanctions and what potentially the Trump administration would do about them.
Yeah. You mentioned the White House is sort of poo-pooing this, but last night, John McCain and Lindsey Graham were on CNN in a town hall meeting. Any other Republicans saying anything, or is it quiet, or is it oddly, strangely quiet that no other Republicans saying anything.
Well, we just saw Kevin McCarthy, who's a top Republican in the House, just say on television that perhaps he should consider recusing himself from the investigation. I think you're not going to see a Republican say he should resign, but I think you might see some public pressure for Republicans to say, if you want this to be a truly independent look at these ties and just to have it so that nobody is questioning the conclusions, it might be best for him to step aside related to the investigation.
Yeah, and just to get people's memories jogged, Loretta Lynch, Attorney General under Obama, she recused herself from the email controversy when she had an offhanded meeting with former President Clinton on the tarmac.
Yeah, that's a good point. I had almost forgotten about that, that just to have no semblance of bias or influence or any impropriety, you're right, she did do that. So I think the calls from Democrats will say it's the same thing, if not more potentially controversial.
Karen Travers, you must sleep in 15-minute increments with the news
The
coming
phone
out.
is always buzzing.
Karen, thanks
Remember
for...
that speech the president gave to Congress? That was only 36 hours ago. Feels like a month.
Karen Travers, ABC News correspondent, thanks for spending time with us this morning.
Thank you.
You got it. One of the best in the business, and she checks in with us all the time. We'll see where all of this goes. St. Louis City has now going to increase the minimum wage because the state Supreme Court said everything they did was constitutional. There are some businesses saying that that is going to adversely affect jobs and hours because of the minimum wage increase. We'll check in with that story in 15 minutes after ABC News. It is 6:57, Big 550 KT.